Charles Heitmuller.
Courtney Florentine.
And we are Polar Bear.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, whether you're single or not, if you're single, you may want to listen in while typing and, downloading this new app, Polar Bear, that Charles and Courtney have created. Yes, two guys created this dating app. Are you surprised? We're going to see why Polar Bear and what makes it new. Welcome, guys, to the show. How you doing?
Doing great.
Doing awesome, man. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for accepting. I'm just so nosy, and I have not, in full disclosure, used Polar Bear. You can't see the grays in my head, but I got two kids in homeschool and my wife over here. So it's not. I saw Polar Bear and I said, this is something new and fresh. Let me see if they'll talk about it. So you guys introduce us to Polar Bear and what makes it different.
Sure. So I guess we're technically considered a dating app, although we kind of self-identify as more of an icebreaker app. But essentially the way the app works is you start by landing on our map screen, which will show you your immediate area and all the Polar Bear locations in your immediate area. These locations are places that people socialize, bars, clubs, lounges, but really they can be anywhere. And what that map will show you is how many of those locations in your area and how many people are actually there checked in using Polar Bear. Once you decide on which location you want to go to, you can then check in once you're there, only when you're there, and see everyone else also using the Polar Bear app. And then from there, we become more of an icebreaker app. So if you see a guy or a girl, I always use the bar example, but this really could be used anywhere. Let's use a bookstore for this podcast. Let's say you're at the bookstore and you checked into Polar Bear and there's a guy or girl across the bookstore who you've made eye contact with a few times, and you can open up the app, and if they're also using it, let them know that you're interested in connecting. So sort of like that icebreaker in real life aspect.
Okay, I like that because I want to go later on and talk about, could this be like a business app? So then, for businesses and entrepreneurs, people can say, oh, they're on, Polar Bear Executive and they're in the app. I like the shirt, by the way, the Polar Bear. I'm just noticing on the shirt. Maybe there's some swag for sale. You guys can let us know about. But
we might have to bring you onto the team, man. You're just plotting the next 10 years of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's if, you get 10 years, because there's somebody who's going to offer you $1 billion and you're going to say, do I need the money, or, do I just love what I'm doing? So with it being an icebreaker, let's talk about safety, because I think that's a big issue for guys and girls. We're here in Florida where you might meet someone beautiful, but they might not have the best intentions for you. So how is safety taken care of?
Yeah, one of the things, and that's a big, that was a big worry for us when we first started, because we wanted to make sure that we were able to create a safe experience, and we've actually built that into the app. What we have is basically like a community, like a report system. So once you join the app, you actually are allowed to send messages to the admin, where if somebody does something that's either disrespectful, harassment, any type of situation like that, you're actually able to send a message to the admin where it's basically like a report where you are basically like suspended for the app. And if there's multiple reports, you can actually be banned from the app. So it basically helps where you have this little toolkit, so to speak, where if something happens, you're able to send us a report or to block a person or to make yourself invisible on the app. And then we take over from there. We thought of it, and it's interesting because one of the things that goes out, that happens when you go out, is usually if somebody's bothering you, there's really nothing you can do except leave the bar, right? Or leave, the location that you're at, or you call the police at that point, right? And sometimes it doesn't even have to get to that level. But with Polar Bear, what you're actually able to do is there's actually some type of written history or report where if you do something and you report that person, it's somewhere, right? It's in the database, and that person knows now if you are going to continue using this, this is not behavior that's acceptable. If it happens more than once, then you just won't be on the app anymore. So that's something you don't necessarily have when you normally go out, without Polar Bear.
And talk about me joining the team. And you guys don't have to co-sign this, but for the long term, I'd love the app that follows those who've been kicked off so we can kind of stalk the stalkers. I'm one of those guys.
That's a reality TV show, actually.
Yeah, it definitely is. So how did you two create this? You looks like you guys could still be in college or just coming out. So tell us the story, how it came together.
Stop it. We're actually north of 30, both of us. We really quick backstory on how Courtney and I met. We met straight out of college. We both got into cognitive therapy, where we were helping we were helping kids with learning disabilities. That's how we first met at that job, and we had done that together for 3 or 4 years. We worked for this company, and essentially it was like a franchise. We did such a good job together. We were like bottom 10% when we first started in terms of like nationally ranked. And when we by the end of my 3rd or 4th year, right before I ultimately left, we built the company up to like top 10% of franchisees in the country. So, we always worked really well together. And it was funny because on my last day, when we were actually celebrating my first job in the city, we went out to happy hour, and this is where the idea came from. We were out at happy hour. We were enjoying some drinks and food, and a girl across the bar made eye contact with me a few times. And I turned to Courtney and was basically like, man, wouldn't it be great if you could kind of just know before going, right? And I have to be in the right mood to go and talk to somebody. And also, you don't want to bother people if they're not necessarily interested and they're just there to have lunch and a good time with their friends. So that's sort of where the idea came from. I was like, man, it'd be great if we had something like this. And then a few days later, Courtney called me up and he's like, I can't stop thinking about this. Let's do this. And here we are now.
Beautiful. Now, a lot of times, with partnerships, I mean, it's a real relationship. In the beginning, do you talk about, hey, you're the tech guy, I'm going to handle everything else? Like, how do you share those responsibilities and then say, we're going to think 7 steps ahead? And, if you ever want to buy me out, or if we ever going to be bought out, this is the number, so we can all be on one accord. How do those conversations come about? And then, of course, I'm sure you put them on paper, but walk us through that, because a lot of folks struggle with that.
Yeah, I mean, we actually had the cheat sheet, right? Because before we got into business, we worked together, like Charles said, right? That allowed us to establish like what our strengths were. Like, it was funny when we used to work together, we used to have all of these different events, right? And when we would go together, Charles was always the person, really personable, talking with people, being able to like sell whatever it was in terms of like the product, the experience. And then I was the person getting those details set up, making sure everything with like the organization of it was good. And then when it comes to like being creative, both of us would like join together. And then, so it ended up working out really, really smoothly. But when we got to this business, we were like, hey, let's not move away from that, right? Like the things that you had your strengths at, that's what you're going to stick to. The things that I had my strengths at, that's what I was going to stick to. And then when we have things that we deem to be either weaknesses, right, we either try to reach out to someone who knows more than us. We basically try to make decisions together, and we feel if this is what works, let's do this together. And then, adjust. One of the biggest things that I can say to anybody who's doing a business, you have to be okay with the pivot, right? Like, you do something and you realize it's wrong. Don't just fall into the wrong even more, right? Change it up and try to do something different. But the hardest part of working together is just when you both feel like, all right, we both don't have an expertise in something. How do we find the right solution? And then us just being okay with admitting like, we don't know everything and you don't have to know everything, right? But we work together really well in terms of just understanding like strengths and weaknesses. And it allows us really to just work seamlessly when we come to a new problem, because we already know what we're good at. We already know what we're bad at. And those times where we fight and argue sometimes are like the best situations, because it allows us to put everything out there and there's always new information that we find out about each other. And that's been the fun process about this, is like, I've known him for 8-9 years, and I still learn new things about him. So it's been fun, and it's just open communication. Right?
Yeah, and something tells me like Charles has comedic timing. I've heard some of the things he said. I mean, he could definitely, have a stand up. Maybe you guys do it together like Neil did his, where he's like 3 different people and you guys, work off each other. But and I don't think, Charles, you admit to that timing, but I see it as somebody
Oh
who
no,
I
make
think
everyone aware of it.
And you talk about being north of 30, which is still young, because I am too. We're still young and we're still growing. How is Polar Bear going to expand? Because I am a semi-pro date doctor for people married that I've introduced. And if they come back, right, they can stay married. If not, those 50%. Hey, things happen. You got to come back to the doctor for a checkup. But will Polar Bear, go to Europe? Will it hit Africa, Asia?
Oh boy. Yeah, we sure hope so. We sure hope so. I think the nature of this app is, it's like we've only been in business for like 5 or 6 weeks. So take this with a grain of salt, but Courtney and I, we go on walks a lot and we talk, and just recently we were just talking about how like we're doing something that no one else has done, right? So like, not only is it different and no one else has done it before, it's extremely difficult because, with the current situation of the world, like the current state of the world, rather, people social distancing, that's one thing that's made this difficult. Another thing is, when you think about other dating apps, like you can market pretty lightly to a specific area, get like 100 to 200 people, and be semi-successful because there's no need for that sort of in real life. There's no in real life component to those apps. So if I'm on the app from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., it doesn't matter if anyone else is on the app because I can send a message and that'll be waiting, or that like rather, and that'll be waiting for the time that the other person logs on, and we could eventually find a time and place to meet. What's so difficult about Polar Bear is we need to create these hotspots, right? Those locations we talked about earlier, and we need to make sure people are going to those locations, and that when people open up the app, those locations are popular, and that there's actually traffic there. And it's been very, very challenging. So the idea of expanding is an exciting one. But I mean, listen, we'd love to be everywhere. I think that's definitely on the roadmap, but we're probably years away from that. We got to really crack this sort of the code here with trying to expand in Florida for now. And then I think once we kind of find that playbook, the world is our oyster, I guess. We're definitely open to being everywhere in a bunch of different languages, because I think, people not connecting in person, especially the younger generations, is a sort of a growing epidemic. A lot of people haven't been on a first date, going into college, and it's because a lot of people are behind screens. And although Polar Bear does start behind a screen, everything on our app is pushing you towards that in-person connection, right? We only give you 3 messages. You can only see people and match with people if you're in that same location as them. So we're really pushing people to get out and be social and yeah. Sorry, kind of went off on a tangent there, but yeah, Asia and Africa and Europe sound great.
No, the beautiful thing, I mean, you can, express yourself and there's no time, like, give the game. Somebody will, spark something, because there's somebody right now, whether they're 14 or 44, who's listening and saying, well, these guys can do it because, and they had, venture funding, or they had angels. And we're going to get into that, people, to find out. But you can easily now go create something like, your own NFT platform that looks like Rareable on Fiverr, and spend less than, $1,000. So I don't like people to have a defeatist attitude. That's why we have conversations like this and say you can do it too. So let's get into it. Were you guys born blue bloods, or did you get Mark Cuban to fund this without even going on Shark Tank? How was it put together? Did it take a whole bag of money to do?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part about that is if we did have Mark Cuban, life would be a lot easier, and I have a bigger smile on my face than I do now. But we have both Charles and I are two people who have literally grown up working from like young, right? Like scrapping ever since we were like kids. Like I know, like as myself, the first lesson I learned with like saving money was like with my mother when she wanted me to like, I don't know, buy something for myself. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm a kid. And she's like, that's not an excuse. And then from that point on, I learned to like save money and like work for it. And with Charles and I, when we first started working together, that was like one of the things that we had to start with this new business. Like you said, like we were in the bottom 10%. And that means when you're in the bottom 10%, you're not making money. So all these decisions that you got to make now are bootstrapped from the beginning all the way until we actually started to grow a little bit, right? That happened with Polar Bear too. Like we don't have any major funding. Everything we do is bootstrapped. And honestly, it takes creativity. And honestly, it's this genuine love for Polar Bear that I really think like pushes it. Like we make meaningful connections with everything that we've done, whether it be whether it be connections with people that we have when we have a Polar Bear location, whether it be like reaching out and talking to people in the streets about like what Polar Bear is, trying to grow our social media brand and our Instagram following by literally like talking to people and like getting that word of mouth out, because that's important. Like everybody can think, I think that everybody can think that there's like this big money bag that's coming that will help you get to the next level. But if you wait for that, life will pass you by. So we're just going to work as hard as we can until we either get funding or until it blows up and the people demand it. And that's the greatest thing about social media, right? You can have not this large money venture capitalist backing behind you, but if the people demand you and then you grow that way, like that to me is like worth a lot more than money. So to answer your question, yeah, we bootstrap everything. And, we work hard every single day to try to figure out new creative, innovative ways to either get to people or just a new way to let people know what Polar Bear is. And it leads to some awesome, relationships and some awesome connections. And look, we're out here talking to you right now. And this has been like an awesome experience, even as short as it's been. So these are the things that we feel are like worthy when it comes to like building, Polar Bear. And it's been great.
Okay, and we've talked about what Polar Bear is. Let's tell the people what it isn't, because you got some folks who, Tinder and other sites are their friend, and as soon as everyone gets to know them locally, on to the next site. So what is Polar Bear not?
We're almost like the anti-dating app. I think if you look at the way that we're structured and the way that Polar Bear works, it's like supposed to really be like anti-swiping apps. So we're not an app that you can carelessly swipe on people over and over and over again. And listen, I was young once and used swiping apps, and I used to spam the right swipe. I'm not ashamed to say it. You're kind of gaming the system, right? You like, there's like a ratio, right? Swipes per match and then matches to actual real life dates. So you kind of have to game it a bit. So I think what we aren't is anything that's on the market right now. You don't have the ability, like it's very thoughtful, right? Like you're in the same place as somebody that you can potentially connect with. So, if you are genuinely interested in connecting with that person, be really, mindful and thoughtful about whether or not you want to let them know that you're interested, because you're in the same location. And we definitely help with people who lack the courage. And I've been there, for anyone listening, to go and talk to people, for the first time approaching somebody that you might be potentially interested in connecting with. We definitely help with that. But yeah, it can still be nerve wracking to send that like, because you're in that location and odds are that other person can see you. So I think we're a very mindful dating app in that sense. So it's not like it's not an app that you can hide behind a screen and carelessly like people on your couch in your home. This is like, we're kind of forcing people to be a little bit more vulnerable. And listen, you're promised to connect with people when you download these different swiping apps. And notice how I'm not naming them. You are. They make a promise that they're connecting people, and I think a lot of them don't. They don't keep that promise, and that's how we're different. We're keeping that promise. If you use the app, you match with somebody. We're kind of toying with this sort of slogan of like meet 100% of your matches, because it's true. Like you match with somebody, chances are they're 20 feet away from you, 50 feet away from you in that same location. So yeah, I think we're just delivering on that promise that a lot of dating apps fail to.
Okay, this is great. Coming from two guys from, the East Coast in Florida. You guys probably have a leg up, even if you did want venture capital or angel investors, because, Florida's kind of where old people come, to relax, is what it's known for. But you both being from, the tri-cities, tri-state, whatever. Do you guys have any plans to say, you know what, we're going to go reach out and we do want to be on, Shark Tank once we perfect everything inside the system? And do you want venture capital, or are you like, we want to stay so far away from those vultures?
Yeah, no. Remember, whoever's listening, he said vultures, not us. No. I think that we're okay with doing a lot of this like on our own, but we're not ignorant of the fact of like where money can take us, right? And we're open to all decisions. I think one of the things that we both decided when we got started with this is there's never going to be a point where we say, like, if we don't get an angel investor or funding, that like Polar Bear is over, right? Like we understand that we're going to push this to as far as we can. But yeah, we'll definitely be open to talking and reaching out to people to kind of figure out what's best, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to do what's best for Polar Bear as a company, and we also want to do what's best for like the users and that user experience. And if we start realizing that the user experience, they start saying like, hey, these are some of the things that we need, and these are some of the things that would make this app better, and we realize we need funding to get to that point, like we'll do that, right? Like, and the demand of the people is such a powerful thing. We're in Florida now. But if something rises up in another place where we can go and launch, just because there's such a demand for Polar Bear, and maybe funding helps to facilitate that might be something that we look at as well. But we're not two guys that are going to literally like wait and beg and say that nothing is going to happen if we don't. Like, we're not going to rest on our laurels. So yeah, that will allow us to kind of make some of these decisions moving forward in terms of like what needs money, what needs to happen in order for Polar Bear to get to the next level. But we're definitely open to all decisions, because like I said, we're looking to do whatever, is best for Polar Bear.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. For the record, we want funding for sure. We want funding. But we're taking, like Courtney said, we're taking an approach of like, let's assume we're not going to get funding and try to build this ourselves. And we've been doing a pretty good job of that so far. But when we do get funding, we just, back to the question you had earlier about like, Asia, Europe, like we know with funding, we'll get to more places and we'll touch more people quickly, which is ultimately the goal. So as long as whoever we all end up partnering with from a funding perspective doesn't impede on, our values and how the app works with connecting people. Yeah, listen, we're open and willing, and that's really the goal. We want to try. Right now, we're trying to learn as much as we can, and we have in such a short period of time. It's been kind of crazy, all the lessons that have been sort of thrown at us. But we know if we want to take it to the next level, we're going to need funding. So yes, we are open to VCs. Probably not there just yet. We're probably a year, I think, out from maybe VC funding, but yeah, we're definitely open to it, and we understand that without it, it's going to be tough to kind of reach the masses, which is ultimately the goal.
And don't forget Africa, where they say now and future in the world. And if I took both of you, you could pick any country in Africa, give me a month. Both of you, if you're not married now, I could have you married once or twice, because you can have whatever you want. So don't forget Africa when that push comes. This is beautiful. Now, when the success, does come to its height and you guys are, you're there, what's a community give back that you plan on doing? Maybe you're doing something now or that you plan on doing in the future.
Yeah. It's funny. We've been talking a lot about that recently, how we want to give back, not just because it's trendy, but, if it was trendy, we just kind of pick a cause out of a hat. But I, this is not like an official decision by any means, but I'll kind of talk from my experiences, or the heart here for a second. I definitely want to focus on mental health. That's something that's affected my family. So whether that's the sole focus or one of many things that we kind of try and give back to the world, and I think the app can potentially help with that in and of itself, with just, this epidemic of people being lonely right now and behind screens. We're definitely trying to fight that with this app to an extent, but definitely giving back to people who've dealt with depression and other mental health issues. So that is like personal to me, and that's definitely something I want to help with. But yeah, again, that's not set in stone, but we definitely want to give back in some way, shape, or form. And I think for me, that's just top of mind right now.
Yeah. And I think also one of the biggest things is a lot of these lessons that we've learned when we were working in the business that we were with before, is there wasn't necessarily like a lot of leeway that we had when it came to business, like decision making. And we also didn't know whether it had been like us looking something up online or us reaching out to our boss, depending on like whatever it is that she was doing at the time. So when we actually launched here, one of the things that we decided to do, we've had this business for about like 2 years now, is like kind of empowering a lot of like students or people that are just getting out of the workforce to kind of, give them the opportunity to expand their portfolio. So we work with a lot of students as either brand ambassadors or like interns, and then having them literally not just be people that, I don't know, run and get coffee or run and just do these like random menial tasks. Like we really put them in power to help shape what Polar Bear is in terms of like brand, the design, the business, and how we connect with different people. So that's something that we've taken a lot of time to do. And Charles is really, really awesome. Like Charles will run like LinkedIn networking shops in order to like get them to understand like the power of LinkedIn and the power of like, networking with other like-minded businesses or, businessmen and women. And that's something that we feel like is so powerful, because when you're young, you kind of just think you have like the rest of your life, to do whatever. But when you start earlier and you understand business and how it works and like where it can get you, like you're just at a head start that your friends don't have. And that's something that, I feel is like really, really cool when we see someone that we've worked with that gets a job that they may not have been able to get before, just because, oh, I understand not only do I have to build something, I have to sell it to someone who wants it, but I have to be able to understand what that person's thinking and to do the marketing side. So it's cool that we obviously like, this is like a small business right now, but it's cool because you really get to see like all facets of like the business and to understand all order of operations. So that's something that we really pride ourselves in also as well.
No, this is awesome. This is great. You guys, we are going to take the conversation offline because I'm going to try to see if I can convince the guys when they're ready, no rush, to apply for Florida funders. When they do look for that capital, let it start at home right here, Florida funders. We'll talk more about it offline so I don't give you guys listening or watching too much of, the game. I want you to go check out, download Polar Bear. Especially if you're single. If you're married, I didn't tell you to go do that. Don't want you to get in trouble. All right. Y'all be blessed.